In this short tutorial, I wanted to share with you how I position a double thread into my needle. I use a double thread a lot of the time when hand sewing, mainly for strength and security, but the method that I use prevents the two threads from getting tangled quite as much as you would normally expect. So let's start by looking at what you would normally do. Here is my thread. Normally, I would thread my needle with one end through the eye of the needle, and I would pull that all the way through until the two ends met. I would then tie a knot at the end, and that would be my double thread. Well, the problem that you have there is that the two threads are separate. Therefore, the thread can slide through the eye of the needle, and you can end up with more thread on one side than the other. And that's what makes it tangle. So how do we prevent this? So what we're going to do instead is fold the thread in half so that you have a loop at one end and the two ends at the other end. Now we're going to thread the two ends through the eye of the needle. Just like so, and this can be tricky depending on the size of the eye of the needle. Please make sure that you're not working with a massive needle. A lot of my customers tend to pick up something that is huge because it means that it's easy to thread. You will find it easier to get a more professional, neat stitch with a small needle. So if you find you have trouble threading the eye, I would recommend investing in a needle threader. You can buy really cheap little metal ones, or you can purchase more of a snazzier option like this. And this is my preferred one that I tend to use on my desk. I'll show you how to use this in a second. So now that you've threaded the two ends through the eye of the needle, you're simply going to keep moving them along until you get back to the loop at the opposite end of the thread. We're then going to position the needle through the loop, and that will create a sort of loop or a small knot at the end of the needle. You can then move the two threads or slide your finger and thumb between the two threads all the way down to the end to make sure that they're the same length before tying a knot. You don't have to tie a knot at the end, but just make sure that the threads are the same length before you start sewing to sew over yourself. I would then trim away any extra thread there. And there you have it. Because you've got a knot at the end of the needle, you shouldn't have so much of a problem with the threads twisting and getting knotted. One thing to be careful of is that if you're working with a very fine fabric and a very fine needle, having a little bit of an extra knot here can cause a little bit of difficulty with the sewing, and you don't want to catch the fabric as you're running this through. So just check that you don't have a problem with that prior to sewing. Before we finish, let me show you how to use this needle threader. So if you've got a needle threader like this, what you need to do is to position the needle into the needle slot with the eye facing down. You're then going to take your thread, and approximately the middle of the thread you're going to position across in the thread slot here. I then will press the button, and that should connect my needle and thread like so. If I was going to be completing the double thread like I showed you a second ago, I would simply put the needle through the loop there, and that would give me the tiny little knot behind the needle. I could then tie a knot at the end of the two threads, and that would have my problem solved. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and that you learned a new technique today threading the needle like this. Hopefully it will help solve your problems. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your sewing.